Imagine being a doctor, a combat vet, a champion wrestler, and then finding yourself so crippled with anxiety that you're hiding under a desk in your office with the lights out. We're going to learn how Donald Mondragon found himself in that position and then how he fought back today on Manlihood.
This is Manlihood, the podcast for men who want to rise up and live with purpose. With your host, Josh Hatcher, this show is here to help you level up as a husband, father, leader, and man, with real conversations and strategies to help you in every area of your life.
Gentlemen, welcome to Manlihood. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher. So glad that you joined us today. Listen, before we get into today's episode with Donald Skip Mondragon, I want to just let you know that I'm really glad that you listen. Like, so many people listen to this podcast, and so many people have shared these episodes with people. Like, what we're doing here is something pretty awesome. Listen, we've had some amazing guests on our show. We've interviewed Victor Marks. We've interviewed John Deloney. We've interviewed Judge Joe Brown. We've interviewed machine gun preacher Sam Childers. I mean, some of these guys have been on the number 1 and the number 2 podcasts in the world. Yeah. I mean, we're not the number 1 and the number 2 podcast in the world. We've interviewed Larry Hagner, who's got the number 1 fatherhood podcast in the world. So, I'd like to think that we're doing good work. We've talked to some amazing men out there, and we're going to keep doing that. When I say we, it's me. It's Josh. Josh is the guy who does Manlihood. I don't know why I always say we, because it's really just me. One of these days there'll be a team behind me. But right now it's just me. I do the work. There is a movement behind me, which is you guys that listen and you guys that share and you guys that are in the Manlihood Man Cave, which is our private Facebook group, who interact and encourage each other. So I guess I do have a team. We have a movement of guys that's a part of this. I'm just doing the work of the podcast. But I do appreciate you guys being a part of what we're doing. And I want to thank you for being a part of that. And who knows? Let's see if we can make this thing something big and something special. I know that this guest has been trying to get on my podcast forever, and I've been trying to get him on my podcast forever. We have been back and forth for about 2 years. He'll email me and say, hey, I'd like to get on your podcast. And I've said, hey, I want you to be on my podcast. And for whatever reason, we have been like ships in the night. We've booked appointments and had things come up. We've had equipment failures. We've had everything go wrong. And then finally, our paths have come together and we've been able to make this interview happen. So I'm excited. I'm excited to actually be able to have this conversation with Donald Mondragon. And it was a fantastic conversation. I can't wait to bring it to you. So listen, he's a retired Army colonel, a decorated combat veteran, served 26 years in the Army, and he was a general internist and national wrestling champion, and just fantastic dude with a courageous journey through some mental health struggles, really. And he's going to talk about this, and I want you just to listen, because this is what I know, that what we're doing here at Manlihood matters. Because a lot of you guys, and myself included, often find ourselves in a position where we are struggling with our mental health. And men, we don't like to talk about it. We don't like to face it. We don't like to get help. And Skip's story is one that really shows what happens when you've got the balls to get some help. So I want you to listen, and I want you to listen carefully because it's important. So, Donald Skip Mondragon for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Skip, it's awesome to have you here on Manlihood today. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Josh. So delighted to finally be on your show with you.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a little while and had a couple hiccups. I had some stuff on my end that prevented us. And I remember one day, I think we had something scheduled and I had some stuff going on. And it was awesome because you called me anyway. And you're like, hey, man, I see you've got stuff going on. Can I just pray with you? And it really encouraged me. So thank you for that, man. It was awesome. So appreciate that. Appreciate that you've been an encouragement, man. I know that you've been in our man cave, the Manlihood Man Cave, our Facebook group, and you're always there encouraging the guys, and you're doing good work. I appreciate that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell our listeners about yourself? The work that you're doing and what kind of difference you're making in the world, man.
Thank you, Josh. I'm Dr. Skip Mondragon, 26-year Army veteran. I am a general internist, internal medicine physician by trade, and I'm a tough guy. You see, I'm a combat vet, I'm a retired colonel. I'm a national veterans wrestling champion and a national veterans runner-up, but I became a casualty of depression. But before I get into that, my real claim to fame, I must say, is my wife of 43 years, who's an amazing, tough Army wife that put up with so much and does put up with so many things in terms of my idiosyncrasies. She's an author and accomplished, soon to be 3-time published, traditionally published author. And we have 5 adult children, and thank you, Lord, none have come back to roost. 6 grandchildren. And that's really the true claim to fame. But beyond that, I became a casualty of depression my last 18 years, or last 18 months in the army. Things caught up with me. Pains, traumas, things that you don't deal with. And certainly, as a physician, you deal with a lot of suffering. You deal with a lot of death. And those things I never dealt with. And that's things that are heaped upon the traumas and things in normal life, the losses and pains and suffering that you have in normal life. And those things caught up with me as I was preparing to leave the army, and I became depressed. But it was out of the recovery that I received a call, that I received this call. And there's actually a calling through a call, a literal phone call. My brother Chris, whom I call my alter ego, my youngest brother, I have 4 younger brothers, Chris called me and he was very excited. So, Skip, I just attended a Bible study with Franklin Graham, and Franklin was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and he met with some businessmen there. And he was talking to them about suffering, and particularly the suffering of Christ upon the cross. And he challenged these men, asking them, why, especially as Western Christians, do we think we should be immune from suffering if Christ suffered so brutally upon that cross for us? And when Chris shared that, it was like, bam, hit me between the eyes. Because during this whole time of my depression, as it got worse and worse and worse before I finally came to my senses and went and got help, my prayers became, Lord, please deliver me from this stuff. But after that call from Chris, my prayers began to shift there over the next 2 days from Lord, please deliver me, to Lord, what would you have me learn from this? And how might I use it to help others? And that change in prayer changed my perspective, changed the course of my recovery, and changed the course of my life. And I knew at that moment in time, I was going to have to share my story. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew I was going to have to do that. So I began to note lessons learned and lessons that I was learning for the purpose of sharing those. And later that fall, I shared with our hospital staff at large in 2 sessions, talking about my depression and the lessons I learned from it, to decrease the stigma and encourage others that were struggling. People came up to me and said, that was my story. And that was my brother's story. That's my husband's story. That was my father's story. And one man said, that was the most courageous thing that I ever heard anybody do. And so this is not all too uncommon, all too common, I should say. But we struggle
I
inside.
think that's something that I have encountered a lot as I've been working with men, is that a lot of us, including myself, man, we don't like to talk about it or admit it, because feeling sad or feeling down and admitting and saying that sounds like weakness, you know? Like, now, if we want to say we're angry, that sounds like strength, you know? like we're okay with saying that and showing that, but to say I'm grieving, or to say I'm depressed, or to say I feel sad today, like
Mhm.
nobody wants to ever really admit that, and that's a hard thing for, I think, people
Right.
to really acknowledge.
There's a former American Association of Psychology who was the president of the American Association of Psychology, who coined a term, normative male alexithymia. And it literally means feelings without words. So men, certainly in my generation and following, and I think this is changing, thankfully, there and has been changing, but we grow up in this stilted environment. Don't be a crybaby. Don't be a wimp. Be a man when you would show some emotion. It wasn't modeled for us. Did you hear a man you looked up to say, I'm sad? Ever say that? I'm grieving. I'm frustrated. That person hurt me. I feel betrayed. Did we ever have that modeled for us? So we have this array, if you will, of negative emotions that we experience, but don't know how to put words to them. Like you said, certainly anger, because betrayal, grief, things that they're, when we feel threatened and so forth. Yeah, we know how to show anger, but do we know how to show these other emotions in their full array and put words to them? And so many of us grew up not doing that, and it was further exacerbated by men telling us, don't be a crybaby, don't be a wimp, don't you dare do that. From the time you were very little. And so we squelched those feelings. And as we grew up, we lost touch with our feelings. And so growing into manhood, we're having to get back in touch with our feelings. And I think that's part of growing as a man, is learning how to plumb the full array of our emotions and to properly express them.
Yeah. And I don't think that means that we're being weak or girly or feminine at all. Like,
No.
There's a lot of people in this men's space, right, who like to describe being in touch with your emotions as being in touch with your feminine energy. And that always makes me really mad. And I've interviewed some of these guys, and some of these guys I've interviewed them on my podcast, and they're brilliant men, and I don't want to downplay them or talk bad about them, but I'm like, no, look, if you're a man, you have no feminine energy. You know what I mean?
You're a man, you're a man.
You're a man. And if you have sadness, or if you have, whatever feelings you have, if you have, romance, or if you have whatever, those are masculine emotions. That's a masculine part of you. If you have a need for comfort, that's also masculine. You just express it in a masculine way,
Yeah.
And yeah, so whenever they start talking about their feminine energy, that's not the case here, buddy. You don't have any feminine energy.
Those are human emotions,
Right.
expressed in a masculine manner, because we are men. We have brains that are different than women. Our hormonal balance is different than women. Our very base makeup is different than women by the basis of our DNA. We are different beings. And so, yes, we're going to express these differently because just from the very basis of the way we are made, when you look at our brains and you look at our DNA, it is distinctly different.
Skip, let's get into your own story a little bit. Let's talk about, kind of that tough guy side of you, the things that maybe led up to that place, before you realized that you were depressed.
Sure.
What was your life like when you were heading up, kind of getting to, sounds like you were becoming quite accomplished, right?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. But you have to go back to the origins, I think, in terms of, I was typically the smallest kid in my class growing up. I was bullied mercilessly. I was awkward physically and socially, which didn't help. When we go out to pick teams during recess or gym, I was the last kid chosen, and then this chorus would go up, why does he have to be on our team? And that was my life. I was miserable at any sport that I tried. I didn't know how to throw. I didn't know how to kick. I didn't know how to run, jump, catch. I didn't have, my father wasn't around growing up. Didn't have an older brother. And so I had to learn those skills. And so I was miserable at that. As I said, bullied. And then in 8th grade, I discovered wrestling. And it was the first time I ever had this sense, I think I could be good at this. And after some practices, I think I could be really good at this. Made varsity as an 8th grader. I didn't win any matches. 9th grade, I'd be so hyped up before matches, I wouldn't sleep all night. Didn't win any matches. But after 9th grade, I won my first state tournament. And it was varsity throughout high school, 2-time district champion, honorable mention, All-American, state runner-up. And so had a lot of success, won a lot of state freestyle tournaments, placed in national tournaments. And so this tough guy mentality was born out of that. I'm going to show you type of mentality. Mm-hmm. You're not going to ever outwork me. I might be the fastest, strongest, most coordinated, but you'll never outwork. And so those origins carry over. And so now you go through schooling, you go through college, you go through medical school, you go through residency, you now into the Army, and now I'm a colonel, but along the way, been deployed, spent 37 months deployed, most of that in combat zones. And so this mentality, as I said, is carried over. I'm this tough guy. I'm the guy that pushes myself in the gym, works out like a madman, likes to beat the young guys on the Army physical fitness test. That's me. Wants to score on the extended scale. It's not good enough just to score the maximum. I want to be on the extended scale. So that gives you my mentality. All right. I'm the guy that goes out and competes at the age of 56 and 57 to win a championship and a runner-up. So you kind of see where I'm coming.
Yeah.
And so when I start sinking into that depression, what do tough guys do? We just push harder. Because that's what tough guys do. That's what wrestlers do. We have even a word for it. Got it out. And the harder I pushed, the worse I got. And I'm a doctor. But I couldn't step back far enough to say, Skip, look at this picture. What's going on?
Yeah, there also comes that place where, all right, I've pushed as hard as I can go. There's only so much achievement, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's only so much achievement that you can have. And there's only so much fulfillment that you can get from that achievement. And so
Right.
It's almost like the next natural step is like, and then there's the other end of things too, right? Like, I say this all the time, and I think people look at me like I'm crazy. And I think everybody has depression, right? Because there's clinical depression. Like, I hate this. This will make sense when I say it, I think. Anxiety and depression, we only have one word for those things, right? When I think we should have more than one word for those things, because you have clinical anxiety and clinical depression,
Right.
which are, conditions that people have that sometimes
Right.
require more advanced treatment and medication to treat. And then
Right.
you have anxiety and depression that everybody has sometimes, or feelings that everybody, or periods of time that everybody goes through sometimes, that everybody deals with sometimes. And so I wish we had different words for those two different concepts,
There's this That's a great point, because there's that spectrum, and there's the normal human emotions that I can feel extremely sad, withdrawn, discouraged, despondent in the normal course of life. But as you said, clinically depressed, this is where life becomes black and white, where you withdraw from things. Things have lost their luster. You're going through life black and white. You're carrying around this dark, heavy, palpable cloud. Your mind is in a cloud, confused. The cognition is off. You're indecisive. Guilt, shame, and self-worth are in the toilet. Negative thoughts are just battering you. You may struggle with sleep problems like I did, horrible insomnia. Some people may just sleep and want to sleep and sleep. So it could affect your appetite, your energy levels, your headaches and pains, because the inflammation, the old injuries, the osteoarthritis just flared. And so a lot of things there. I mean, I didn't have any interest in my wrestling, in coaching the kids and watching wrestling. My libido, my sex drive in the toilet. All these things. It affects you on every single plane. I felt like my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling. I couldn't remember what I read 5 minutes before. I thought I had senile dementia. So it's this horrible constellation of symptoms that you struggle with.
When you got to that place where you realized that you were in the place where it had gotten beyond just, I'm in a depressed feeling or in a depressed mode, to I am depression as a condition, right? When you, when you said, okay, I need help now, right? Did you decide to seek treatment right away? Or did you, when you realized that's where you were, or how did you get to the place where you said, okay, I need help getting out of this?
April 17th, 2014. Got up early, got to the office early like I normally do, before anybody else on that floor. Got to my office, unlocked the door, turned on the lights, stepped inside, and then everything came crashing down. I locked the door behind me, turned off the lights, closed the blinds. I turned off the phones and crawled under my desk in a fetal position. And for 4 hours, there I lay on that musty carpet. And all these thoughts and images of what had gone on years and years before. And I lay there asking myself, Skip, how did you get here? Skip, what happened? Skip, you're a tough guy. How did you get here? And for 4 hours, all these things just flashing and floating through my mind. And then finally, boom, Skip, you're depressed. Go get help. So I crawled up from under that desk with a little flicker of hope, and I went and got help. And so later that afternoon, so initially I went down to my primary care clinic to get an appointment with the embedded psychologist. They said, well, he can see you next week. Got back to my office and said, I don't want to wait till next week. Being chief of the department and being a colonel, I called the chief of behavioral health, another colonel, and said, hey, Joe, this is what's going on. Can you get me an appointment? That afternoon, I was seeing a clinical psychologist, and she did a thorough evaluation, confirmed the diagnosis of major depression. That started my long, rocky road to recovery.
Yeah. It sounds like the state that your depression was in was pretty bad. Did they prescribe antidepressants to help treat some of those symptoms for you?
I ended up on medication. So my therapist said, we need to have your primary care doc do a thorough evaluation. And she did. She started one, and that was later changed. And then I was seeing a psychiatrist. So I had what I call the A-team. I had my primary care physician. I had my psychiatrist. I had my clinical therapist, whom I was seeing weekly. Of course, I had love from family, friends, and my faith. All of these things working in concert to help me. So yes, it definitely had medicines, and I'm still on medicine.
I like that you picture that as a team like that, because I think a lot of people just, especially like the town that I live in, our mental health treatment here is pretty lacking. We have I don't know why it is this way. I think we have a lot of people with a lot of mental health problems. So our care here is very limited. They're kind of at their capacity. So they hand them the pills and send them home. They just really don't have the ability to have the team that they need. You know what I mean? To get the support they need. Yeah, I think that therapy is really where a lot of the work is done, and then, there's the other aspect of it where you start taking care of yourself, and you actually, I'm going to tell you what, like I have not in my journey here lately. I don't know that I think different people might look at me and say that I don't know that it's ever been as bad for me as you described, but I know that I've definitely have some depression to a degree, right? I know that for me, if I get up and I walk every day, if I take the time to invest in my hobbies and if I eat better, right?
Yes.
I feel better.
Yes.
I don't have, if I spend the time with my friends and if I'm real with them and talk about what I'm going through, I don't feel those feelings that I felt. So for me, I haven't pursued the mental health route, and it seems to be doing better when I pursue things that way. I do know that I do know in my mind where that line would be. I know, like, if I get to the place where if I start having thoughts that are saying you'd be better off dead, you know what I mean? I'm calling somebody. I'm like, I'm not gonna, and I have family members, who have those thoughts on a regular basis. And I'm like, so they get help, like, we're going to get you help, and they get help, because that's not acceptable. Like, that's not a good thing to have those thoughts and those feelings.
No.
Was that an issue for you? Were you having suicidal thoughts with your depression?
That was perhaps one of the only cardinal symptoms of suicide I did not have, which I'm very grateful. But every time I go see the psychiatrist, that was one of the assessments. Are you having suicidal thoughts? They would regularly assess, when I have appointments, are you suicidal? So that is something, of course, they monitor closely. When you are severely depressed, there's that suicidality, and it's so important to do that. And lest I forget, one of the things important to remember, I think there's this myth and misnomer, that this idea that if you talk about suicidality of the person, if they're thinking about it, you're going to prompt them to act. No, that is not the case. You asking may be life saving. So if you think somebody might be contemplating suicide, please ask, are you considering harming yourself? Are you thinking about harming yourself? Do not hesitate to ask that question. You may be saving a life. And
I know that I've asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I know I've asked a lot of guys that question, and most guys that I've asked usually tell me no. There's been times where they say yes, and we encourage them to get help. Look, a lot of times they'll say something like this: "I don't know how much more I can take," and that's something I hear a lot. I don't know how much more I can take. I can't take much more of this. That's the question that always prompts me to ask: are you considering hurting yourself? Are you considering suicide? And when you ask the question, they'll stop and they'll think and they'll say, I'm not. But they are recognizing that I feel like I feel like I don't have anything left to fight. But then when they're really faced with the question, no, I don't want to end it. I don't, that's not what I'm feeling. But I definitely feel like I don't have anything left to fight with, so I understand that. But dude, the statistics on men committing suicide and this issue, dude, it's scary. Like men commit suicide at such a higher rate than anybody else. It's scary, man.
Over 40,000 men in the U.S., almost 4 times as many men as women die by suicide. And there's reason for that. Suffering in silence. Men, again, growing up, like I said, with this normative male alexithymia, not being able to put words to that idea, that this feeling that you're weak, you're wimp, You're less than a man if you share your feelings. The expectations upon men not having community, not living in community, not having what we call in the military a battle buddy, somebody who watches their back, somebody who looks out for them. Women communicate very differently than men. Women can communicate just face to face, just sit down and share things. Men typically have to be doing something to share an activity and tend to communicate more shoulder to shoulder, women face to face. And so this different dynamic, the way men tend to communicate. And so there's that different dynamic. And men tend not to have many friends, many close friends versus women. So it's a very different dynamic. So whom to confide in, somebody that they can share with that's trusted. So a lot of these dynamics, plus when men do attempt suicide, it's usually with lethal force as compared with women. And so there's a lot of reasons in regards to that men are dying by suicide at much higher rates than women throughout the world. And this is not a phenomenon that's just in the U.S. This is a global problem that we see that it is throughout the world. So it's the same every other society.
And so I guess I would say for sure, if there's anybody listening and if you are having ideations, if those thoughts are popping through your head, if that's something that you are struggling with, dude, call the number, call that suicide prevention number, call your counselor or your therapist. Don't suffer through that. Don't put your family through that. Just honestly, like this past week was the anniversary of one of my childhood good friends who just a few years ago as an adult ended his life. And he was like a brother to me. He was, my best friend, and he was my best friend's brother. And so he was my brother's best friend. The four of us hung out and we were brothers. He wasn't just my best friend. He wasn't just my best friend's little brother. I mean, we were brothers. And, it hurts to think about the fact that he had to end his life. He didn't have to.
No.
But it hurts. And you don't just end your pain, you give it to everybody else. So don't do that. So if that's you, get help,
Yes. Call 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline, 988. You can call, if you're a veteran or if you're a service member, 9881, 88 extension 1. And you brought up two great points there, that pain, because universally individuals that survive a suicide attempt will tell you, I really didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to end. I just wanted the pain to end. So they're looking for relief from pain. But if they could understand that pain is temporary, get help. People are there to help. People don't want you to be in pain. But that pain goes on and on for the rest of the lives of those people that love you. That pain is not ending. It goes on in the lives of all those who love you. So please, if you are struggling, as Josh said, get help. Get help. And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to those who love you. And you owe it to your friends. Get help.
Yeah, Skip, as you went through that process of getting help yourself, and I know that you weren't struggling with the suicidal thoughts, but as you went through that process of getting help with your depression, what did that look like for you to start to see that pain change? Did that pain go away? Did that pain turn into something different? What did that look like?
I love that question. You see, my confidence, the self-worth, as I mentioned, were in the toilet because I'd been battered for 18 months by these negative thoughts. You let your family down. You let your department down. You let the hospital down. You let the army down. You don't deserve to be a cook. Who's going to want to hire you? You're a fake. Thoughts like this just battered me. And I felt worthless. I felt guilty. I felt shameful. And I remember early on in counseling with my therapist telling him, Mike, wanted my career to end on a high note, not with a whimper, because that's how I felt. I just felt so beat down, beat up. I remember him saying, "No, sir, I think it will." And we were going through cognitive behavioral therapy, which is literally just rewiring your brain with having to change that mindset. And that's what we worked on, is various ways to change that to where, once again, rebuilding things that had been so warped and beat up by this disease. And so with counseling, with medications, with tender loving care, with support and love from others, and then the things you talked about, maintaining the regular exercise, getting back out in the sun. I had kind of closed and withdrawn. I wasn't getting out in the sun in that life-giving environment. I maintained some exercise, but it wasn't doing it in the same fashion. I'd withdrawn. I wasn't out in community as much. And so doing things that would be enriching to me. I wasn't laughing. I wasn't showing the gratitude the way I normally would. I wasn't doing some of these things that are life-giving. And so it was, again, learning to incorporate these lessons I learned, learning how to incorporate them. And those are things that I write about, is how did I incorporate that to give me life in my recovery, and give life and preventative measures to others to prevent depression or to maintain health and wellness or to help them in their own recovery. So it was doing all of those things in concert, but I couldn't do it on my own. I needed a team to help me do that and to crawl out of that, claw my way at times, out of that deep, deep, dark pit. So it was a long, arduous process.
So let's say that we've got guys that are listening. They're still kind of stuck in that mindset where they're, because I know these guys, right? I know that I've heard this because I know these conversations. Yeah, that'll work for you, but it'll never work for me, right? I know exactly that's the response, because I've had these conversations. I see them. They talk about they've been betrayed by their woman, right? She's put them through, hell and taken everything, and so he's bitter and he's hurt and taking the kids and taking all his money or whatever situation, nobody understands him. And he's in this place where he doesn't trust anybody and nobody's got his back, and he thinks he's the lone wolf. And, instead of on the inside, he's crawled under the desk. Do you know what I mean? On the inside, He's crawled under the desk. And on the outside, he's still trying to project.
The outside, he's still.
Yeah. And any minute, he's going to come crashing down.
Sure.
On the outside. What do you say to that?
You're never, ever. I know that feeling that you are in that deep, deep, dark pit, and you can feel all alone until even abandoned by God, but you are never, ever, ever truly alone. One of my favorite verses is in Psalm 3, verse 3, that has helped me through this and continues to help me. But thou, O Lord, art a shield about my glory and the lift of my head. Because when you think about it, what happens when we're feeling shame, guilt, pain, defeat? What do we tell people? Get your head up. Get your head up. And you see, that's what God tells us, son, get your head up. Get your head up. And what I realized when I was in recovery, that's what people were doing. God was standing there like on the edge of the mat. We tell our young wrestlers, get your head up. Get your head up. Why? Because they're vulnerable to attacks if their head drops. Whether they're on their feet wrestling or they're down on the mat with the opponent on top of it. Get your head up. And God was out there in my corner saying, son, get your head up. My wife, sweetie, get your head up. My therapist, Skip, get your head up. Sir, get your head up. My therapist, my psychiatrist, my primary care physician, my friends and other family. Skip, get your head up. You're never, ever truly alone. You may feel that way, but understand you're never, ever truly alone. And God is always whispering, son, get your.
I like the way that there's always wrestling metaphors, right? A couple years ago I had on there was a guy I went to high school with. He leads a jiu-jitsu and wrestling organization, and he was actually the no-gi world jiu-jitsu champion, which is pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool guy. And we had him on. Yeah, really cool guy. And he's almost 50 now. You know what I mean? He just won that recently. So he's in good shape and works hard. But he talks about how wrestling there's so many metaphors for life in wrestling.
Yes,
so you pointed out one. Do you have any other metaphors for life?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, you see, face to face, hand to hand, eye to eye contact. You see, when you come in contact with depression, other difficulties in life, it's eye to eye, face to face, hand to hand, and you have to overcome fear of your opponent, fear of defeat, fear of humiliation, and fear of failure, internal fears that you struggle with. So any fears that you have are going to be revealed out there on the map. And so any insecurities and fears that you have, and you are confronting something like depression, are going to come. But you have to be willing to confront those. You're going to step out on that mat. Because you and that other opponent, guess what? If you have insecurities and fears, they're going to come out on that against a tough opponent. It's just going to be revealed out there. It's just you and him, baby. And so it's going to test who you are. And so that idea now is, okay, who am I? Am I going to allow this to defeat me? Or am I going to draw upon everything I've been taught, everything that I've learned, everything that's been modeled to me in terms of strength, in terms of resilience, in terms of determination to confront this foe? Because I felt like I had a 300-pound behemoth on my back. I was going through this process. But one thing wrestlers learn is we don't want to be on our backs. We do everything possible to get off our back because we do not want to be on our backs. And wrestling teaches us how to get up off our backs because life is going to knock us on the back. But we just have to learn to do whatever we can to get back up and get up off our backs. And sometimes that's all it takes is today to determine I'm not going to stay on my back. I'm going to get up and take that next step. And sometimes that next step is simply to pick up the phone, to make an appointment, to call somebody and say, that's that next step. But to do those things that you need to do to take care of yourself. It's training.
This is good stuff.
It's good stuff.
I really appreciate it. I like to ask all my guests a few questions, man.
Sure.
And so the first one is this. What does it take to be a man?
Well, I love that question. What does it take to be a man? Men have two sides, if you will. And I call them the two sides to men. So we have this tough, authoritative, protective provider side. That's this side, this facet of a man. But then we have this other facet of a man. This is that side that is tender, that is compassionate, that is gentle, that is generous, that can shed tears, that can say, I'm sad, I feel betrayed, I'm grieving, confused. I'm not sure what I'm feeling here, but something's not quite right. And if we only show this side, we're rigid, we're hard, and we're only showing part of our true nature. If we only show this side, we're a wimp. And so a man has to express both sides, both facets, to express our full masculinity, because that's the way we're created as men. That's the way we're created, to show all the array and all the magnificence of who we are. Wider protector, tough, gentle, kind, generous, but able to emote at the appropriate times. But that love and tears.
And And that other side is not the feminine side, just for clarification.
No, sir. It's simply the masculine demonstration of our human nature as men.
And in the same way, when you described your wife and she's tough, right? That also is not her masculine side.
No, sir.
So I just love to clarify that, because I know that there's people out there that love to just get all that mixed up and confused. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I think that's awesome. I think it's that's the whole man. There's a part of us that have to be able to address that and to recognize that we can be that fierce warrior that has the strength to rip your face off, right? And also has the self-control to know when not to.
That's right.
And that's what makes us men, is having both of those in us. All right, Skip, let's say you get your hands on a magical time traveling device and you can go back in time and visit the 10-year-old version of yourself. What do you want to tell him?
Tell that 10-year-old, don't be so worried about what others think about you, because in the years to come, they're not going to be thinking about you. Be more concerned about who you can become and how you can influence and bless the lives of others. But don't be so concerned about what others think about you. You become the person you're meant to become, so that you can bless and help others to become better people too.
Awesome. And Skip, what is your best advice for the men that are listening into this podcast today?
Best advice is, men, we take a lot on, and we want to provide, we want to protect, we want to ensure our families have what they need. We want them to have things that were better than what we had. And we want to ensure they're well taken care of. But in order to do that, we can't lose ourselves, and we must recognize that we've got to take care of ourselves if we are going to do that. If you're driving yourself into the ground in the pursuit of caring for your family, you are going to suffer consequences. More often than not, it's going to come out in ill health, or it's going to come out in behaviors, be it drinking too much, gambling, pornography, driving like a maniac, other behaviors, because you're not dealing with the stresses, strains, pressures, or pain. And so these maladaptive behaviors to deal, because pain has to go someplace. Pressure has to go someplace. And so you have to think about, how are you taking care of yourself? So in your pursuit of taking care of your family, of providing for your family, of protecting your family, of protecting their future, ask yourself this question: how are you taking care of you to ensure you can continue to take care of them? Self-care is not self.
I think that's really good advice, man. Thank you. Something I need to remember and keep in mind myself, man. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Skip, if the guys want to get in touch with you, I know you've got a book that you've written, and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for that to happen?
I'm certainly on Facebook. They're probably most active on LinkedIn. Right, I do a lot of interaction. Facebook, they could find me. They're Skip Mondragon. My book, Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps. They can most easily find this on Amazon, either under the name Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps, or under Skip Mondragon, Mondragon, Mondragon. But open to men there. If you also look up, I'll have a private Facebook group on Facebook that's just for men. And so there, I welcome men into a community, just in a private Facebook group also.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to include those links to that stuff in the show notes. So if you're listening or watching on YouTube, just click the description and you'll see those links. And hopefully the guys check out your book and connect with you there. So thank you, man.
That'd be great, John.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. It's been very insightful, and maybe we can have you on the show again sometime, man. Thank you.
It'd be my pleasure, Josh.
Awesome. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Skip, brother, Doc, I'm so glad that you took the time to spend with me, to share your struggle, to share your journey. I'm grateful for the time that you devoted to serve our country, and I'm really grateful that you got the help because you set an example for all of us. And thank you. Thank you. I hope that we can all learn from you, and I hope that if you're listening to this today, and if you find yourself in a position where you know that you need help, that you get help. Because you don't have to do this alone, and you're not alone. Guys, you're not alone. Get the help you need. Because you can get better, you can heal, and you don't have to suffer. All right? Anyway, guys, I'm not a mental health expert, but I am a friend. So if you want a friend to talk to while you're on that journey, shoot me an email, manlihood.com@gmail.com. Reach out to us in the Manlihood Man Cave, our private Facebook group. Some of the guys there would be more than happy to help you. There are actually a couple mental health professionals who are in the group. We can't necessarily, the guys can't necessarily give you mental health help there, but we can at least point you in the right direction. So, let us know what you're going through. We'll try to be there for you in whatever way we can. But as always, guys, I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for being part of Manlihood. Now it's time for you to rise up and take action. Join the Manlihood Man Cave, our free Facebook group, and connect with the other men on the same journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share that episode with a friend. For more, visit manlihood.com.